This skinny, frail boy standing right before you could kill a massive 800-pound tiger with a single punch. He could even lift a 1,000-pound boulder with total ease. And it was all because, after I crossed over into the Great Qin Dynasty, my physical strength began growing by 300 pounds every single year. I originally thought about joining the military to make a better life for myself, but Village Head Lee turned me down flat, saying I wasn't even 15 years old yet and couldn't enlist. I was only 11 back then. All I could do was choke down my excitement and wait patiently. I didn't even bother trying to figure out why my strength was skyrocketing. I just chalked it up to being born with godlike power from a past life. Or maybe just a neat little perk of crossing over to this world. While I waited, counting down the days and nights, the second year passed smoothly, and my strength shot up by another 300 pounds. By the third year, to absolutely no one's surprise, it surged by yet another 300 pounds. This explosive growth in power completely turned my life upside down. By hunting fierce beasts deep in the mountains, I actually ended up becoming the richest guy in Kaoshan village. Life was incredibly comfortable. Even the villagers who used to look out for me were living much better now, too. But even with all of that, it still couldn't wipe out my burning desire to join the army. If anything, the itch only grew stronger. I even thought about faking my age. But I never expected that the day I had been waiting for so long would just quietly arrive on its own. Right there at the entrance to Kaoshan village, my overly excited face happened to catch the eye of the Qin army officer who had come for the draft. Piqued by curiosity, he asked, "Kid, why aren't you afraid of the endless wars and chaos?" Most men who enlist end up dead on the battlefield. After serving for 4 years, he had never seen anyone so thrilled about joining up. He almost thought his own eyes were playing tricks on him. Meanwhile, Village Head Lee was frantically winking at me, desperately trying to get me to back down. But I ignored him completely. Whining like a neglected housewife, I complained, "Sir, I've been waiting for this day for so long, it hurts." Hei Bai, pay my absolute respects to the fierce warrior of Great Qin. I stepped right up to him and respectfully cupped my hands together. Smiling, I said, "Joining the army is all about fighting for a glorious future. To be titled a marquis and named a general." Hearing this, the officer gasped in shock. Not even trying to hide the admiration in his eyes, he burst out laughing. "You're all right, kid. This is exactly how a true son of Great Qin should act. So, how old are you? Got any other brothers back home?" I just shook my head. With a totally calm face, I replied, "Hei Bai is 13 years old. Both my parents have passed. I'm the only one left in my family." Hearing that, the officer hesitated for a moment. He looked like he wanted to say something, but held back. Finally, he spoke up, "Kid, the battlefield is a brutal place. If you end up dead out there, a true man born in a time of chaos should wield a 3-foot sword and carve out an immortal legacy." My calm gaze locked dead onto the officer's eyes, and I declared word by word, a dignified man would never choose a life of meaningless mediocrity. The officer mulled it over for a second before bursting into a chuckle. "You're a sharp-looking kid. And you talk so eloquently too, so how in the world did you end up with a name like Hei Bai? Since you've got that kind of fire in you, I'll go ahead and approve it myself." The moment those words left his mouth, I was absolutely thrilled. Village Head Lee just sighed heavily, seeing that the deal was already done and couldn't be stopped. He immediately spoke up to make me look even better. "Sir, there's something you should know. Don't let Hei Bai's young age fool you. The boy was born with godlike strength. Years ago, our Kaoshan village was hit by a terrible blizzard. A starving tiger came down from the mountains and broke into the village. If Hei Bai hadn't stepped up and beaten the beast to death, I'm afraid we would have lost a lot of good people." Just talking about it brought a look of deep, lingering fear to Village Head Lee's face. Squad leader's eyes flashed. "If you have proof," he said in a deep voice, "go get it, quickly. It'll do you a world of good once you enlist, kid." "Of course I do." My eyes instantly lit up. I hurried to add, "I couldn't bear to throw away the tiger bones." And I made the pelt into a blanket. A hint of a smile broke across the squad leader's face. "Go fetch them, quick. If we can prove you really killed a tiger, combined with your natural brute strength, you just might catch the eye of the higher-ups. It'll make your future a whole lot easier." Without another word, I bolted all the way home and grabbed the tiger bones and pelt. I handed them over to the Qin squad leader. He inspected the pelt and the thick, heavy bones in his hands, determining it was indeed a full-grown beast. His eyes immediately turned dead serious. Maybe just to prove myself, I marched right up to the massive boulder at the village entrance. I planted my feet into a solid stance, channeling all the power from my core and arms. Slowly, I hoisted the 400 to 500-pound boulder right off the ground. The squad leader and the 2 Qin soldiers behind him stared in absolute shock. Not even the fiercest veterans in the army possessed that kind of raw arm strength. "Good boy." The squad leader burst into a booming laugh, praising me. "I, Iron Ox, have been roughing it in the army for 4 years. I fought in 4 or 5 battles, big and small, just to scrape my way up to squad leader. But you, kid, as soon as you enlist, you'll be made a squad leader at the very least. I just let out a cheeky chuckle. Deep down, I couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. Ever since Xianxia's reforms, the common people of Qin finally had a real chance to rise up in the world. But then again, how many could actually survive these endless years of war? Iron Ox suddenly shifted his tone. Alright, time is of the essence. We can't afford to delay. You lot, hurry up and draft the other 11 men to march out with me. The village head gave a solemn nod, his eyes sweeping over the terrified young boys huddled behind him. His eyes were filled with deep sorrow and pity. Don't worry, I spoke up, my voice ringing out clear. Brimming with confidence, I declared, this war will be over before you know it. All 6 states will be united under the banner of Great Qin. My words echoed with absolute conviction. Surprisingly, not a single person there dared to doubt me. I firmly believed that my arrival in this era would absolutely speed up Great Qin's march to conquer the realm, putting an early end to 100 years of bloody chaos, and ushering in true unification. Iron Ox clearly admired my bold spirit, but he hadn't forgotten what we came here for. He immediately barked out, hurry up and make your picks. After a wave of muffled crying and whimpering, the remaining 11 recruits were finally chosen. Iron Ox wasn't completely heartless, though. He gave the young boys an hour to pack up their belongings and say their final goodbyes to their families. An hour later, burning with excitement, I stood alongside the 11 other boys from my village. We set off with Iron Ox, marching straight for the massive military camp in Didao, the capital of Longxi Commandery. We marched hard for 6 solid days. By the time we arrived, the Didao camp was absolutely buzzing with activity. 200,000 fresh recruits were gathered there. We were pretty much the very last batch to roll in. From here on out, we'd undergo grueling training, right up until war broke out or we became fully qualified soldiers of Qin. Only then would we get our official assignments. Right as we were chatting and killing time in the tent, Iron Ox's rough, booming voice echoed from outside. Hey, you rascal, get out here, quick. You're coming with me to meet the commander. My heart leapt with joy. I shot right up and ducked out of the tent. Taking one look at the wide grin on Iron Ox's face, I just knew it. My promotion was practically in the bag. Move it, the commander wants to see you. Iron Ox barked, grabbing my arm and hauling me along. The two of us soon arrived at a training ground. Right in the middle of it, a young general was fiercely practicing his martial arts, completely bare-chested. There were a few guys cheering and clapping on the sidelines looking exactly like a bunch of suck-ups. So this is Meng Tian, asterisk I murmured to myself. I was thrilled, but also felt this indescribable mix of emotions. He was the very first legendary historical figure I'd met since arriving in this era. Tai Niu stood up straight, cupped his hands, and announced loudly. Commander, Hei Bai is here. Hearing this, the shirtless young man instantly stopped what he was doing. He turned his head, and his sharp gaze locked right onto me. Hei Bai pays his respects, Commander, I said, neither haughty nor humble. I cupped my hands in a proper salute. Meng Tian's eyes burned like torches. He looked me up and down, a nod of approval tugging at the corner of his lips. He gave a slight nod, his voice deep and commanding. Not bad, a sturdy build, and a steady gaze. He's got great potential. You have a good eye, Tai Niu. Hearing that, Tai Niu gave a goofy, good-natured grin. He scratched his head. Thanks for the praise, Commander. This kid is strong as an ox. I wouldn't have dared to recommend him if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Meng Tian nodded slightly, then turned to the men beside him and ordered, go fetch some stone weights. I want to test this kid's limits myself. It didn't take long for the men to bring out a set of stone weights, ranging from small to massive. Seeing this, I was secretly hyped. I knew it was prime time to flex a little, so I didn't hold back. I stepped right up to the absolute biggest stone weight of the bunch. Seeing this, a flash of appreciation crossed Meng Tian's eyes. Whether I could actually lift it or not, at least I had the guts to try. Like a real man, taking a breath, I effortlessly hoisted the massive stone block right off the ground. My face didn't even strain. This measly, 200-pound stone was absolutely nothing compared to my 1,000-pound strength. Then, I casually knocked out 20 squats in a row. I didn't even break a sweat. I was barely even breathing hard, leaving the crowd around me gasping in total awe. Watching this, the gleam in Meng Tian's eyes grew even brighter. He clapped his hands and laughed. Excellent, you really do have boundless strength. What incredible skill, Hei Bai, since you possess such tremendous power. And you've already proven yourself by taking down that tiger, I'm making an exception. I'm promoting you to squad leader. You'll be directly under my command. What do you say? I was absolutely overjoyed. I casually tossed the stone weight a good 6 feet away, and bowed deeply. Thank you for the recognition, Commander. I won't let you down. As the massive stone slammed into the ground, it let out a deafening thud, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. The onlookers all gulped nervously. Meng Tian nodded in pure satisfaction. He helped me up and clapped a hand on my shoulder. With your strength, and a little training, you're bound to become a fierce general one day. He was surprisingly friendly to me, completely free of any arrogant airs. My reputation instantly exploded among the new recruits. Even the seasoned veterans heard the rumors about a young rookie with godlike strength who had taken down a tiger and got promoted to squad leader on his very first day. Now a squad leader, I definitely kept my word, keeping the boys from my village right under my command. In this era of endless, chaotic warfare, I was ready to go to war at any given moment, but I never expected. Summer faded, autumn passed, and winter rolled into the new year. Aside from my raw strength increasing by another 300 pounds, and my body growing even tougher, I didn't receive a single deployment order. I was stuck rotting in the Didao military camp, running through boring drills all day long. Then, in the 4th month of King Zheng of Qin's first year, a piece of news broke out that made the blood of every great Qin citizen boil with rage. Jinyang had launched an armed rebellion. General Meng Ao of Great Qin was entrusted with the massive responsibility of leading 150,000 troops to crush the uprising. The very second I heard the news, I didn't give a damn about how tense and heavy the atmosphere in the camp was. I was so thrilled I practically screamed. Hell, I was so excited I almost burst into tears. Nobody knew how painfully long I had been waiting for this. By that same afternoon, the massive army had fully assembled. After more than 10 grueling days on the march, we finally reached Jinyang, but once we got there, General Meng Ao didn't rush to order a siege. As the old saying goes, breaking the enemy's spirit comes first. All 150,000 troops boldly surrounded Jinyang, setting up camp just 500 meters right outside the city gates. Inside Jinyang, the rebels were scared out of their minds, jumping at every shadow. They were absolutely terrified. Even the slightest movement from our Qin forces had them sweating bullets. Seeing our massive army just sitting there without making a move, I went straight to Meng Tian. I couldn't hold back my excitement and blurted out, "Oh man. My commander of 500. Why the hell haven't we attacked yet?" Meng Tian sighed in exasperation. "You can't even recognize basic psychological warfare? What's the damn rush, kid? If you're in such a hurry, I'll make you lead the vanguard when we finally storm the walls." Meng Tian actually just wanted to scare me a little, but he didn't expect me to agree in a heartbeat. I slammed my hand against my chest and grinned. I love the sound of that. Hei Bai, will gladly be the first man up those walls. Meng Tian was so annoyed. He was just about to chew me out when a voice from outside the tent interrupted him. "Orders from the Commander-in-Chief. We launch the siege tonight. Commander Meng Tian, rally your troops immediately." The moment those words dropped, Meng Tian and I instinctively locked eyes. Speak of the devil, after the messenger left the tent, Meng Tian glared at me as I stood there grinning like an idiot. He barked in a low voice, "Get the hell back to your squad. Get ready, and keep your damn wits about you out there. Don't go dying on those Jinyang walls." I let out a massive grin and stood up straight. Thumping my chest loudly, I yelled, "Don't you worry. Tonight is the official start of my Hei Bai's epic, badass legend." Meng Tian shook his head and chuckled, secretly trying to figure out what the hell badass actually meant. Deep into the night, the moon and stars shone brightly. It was the perfect time for a siege. 50,000 Qin soldiers didn't bother hiding their approach at all. In tight formation, they marched methodically, pressing right up against Jinyang. Inside the city, the rebels instantly fell into utter panic, screaming at the top of their lungs. "The Qin army is attacking." General Meng Ao turned his head to his son, Meng Wu, standing beside him. With a deep, steady voice, he ordered, "Go. Not bring shame to your father." The 30-something-year-old Meng Wu spurred his horse forward. He slowly drew his Qin sword from his waist and roared with all his might, "Charge." The deafening war cries of 50,000 Qin soldiers erupted, carrying a terrifying momentum like a sharpened blade. Piercing straight through the clouds. "Attack! Kill them all!" At Meng Wu's command, the Qin army charged wildly, roaring as they swarmed toward Jinyang's walls. Seeing the Qin forces initiate the massive charge, the rebel commander on the walls frantically screamed, "Archers! Ready, fire!" An overwhelming storm of arrows rained down from the sky, and instantly, casualties began dropping among the Qin ranks. The sheer brutality of this cold weapon warfare sent a sudden chill down my spine. At the end of the day, our army was still just too poor and painfully under-equipped. I glanced over at my fallen brothers in arms, lying dead on the dirt in nothing but coarse linen clothes. It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. The productivity in this era is just painfully low. Good thing Meng Tian took a liking to me, and I've been scraping by long enough. That's the only reason I managed to score some leather armor and a razor-sharp Qin sword. As for the fresh recruits, they're stuck in coarse linen, lugging around rusty, tetanus-inducing pieces of junk. Forced to fight the enemy to the bitter end. Look out, here comes the second volley of rebel arrows. We charged right into their kill zone. My man, Niu, rushed to my side, raising his rattan shield to block the incoming barrage. The arrows slammed into the woven vines with heavy, dull thuds. Feeling the raw force against the shield, Niu gasped in lingering fear, "Brother Hei Bai. Thank God for these shields you made. Otherwise, we'd be turned into human pincushions out here. I nodded in total agreement, thanking my lucky stars for a little foresight. I'd figured out earlier that the deadliest weapons in ancient warfare were bows and arrows. So, I gathered my young crew to harvest vines and weave them into these rattan shields. And man, they worked like a charm. Right at that moment, the vanguard carrying the siege ladders finally reached the base of Jinyang's city walls. As they slammed the ladders against the stone, I let out a wild laugh. I roared at my men, "Don't do anything stupid. Push forward in formation, leave me be." The moment the words left my mouth, the muscles in my legs bulged, and I launched myself forward. Like a cannonball fired from a barrel, I bolted straight for the raised ladder. I was going to claim the glory of being the first man on the wall. I was blazing fast. In the time it took the rebels to draw their bows, I was already at the foot of the wall. I pressed myself flat against the stone. The very second the third volley of arrows flew over, I grabbed the siege ladder and propelled my legs with explosive force. I shot up a solid meter in an instant, gripping the rungs tight with both hands. I kept bounding upward. The wall was maybe 7 or 8 meters high. But in just 2 or 3 breaths, the top was right in front of me. I took a deep breath, swallowing the wild mix of adrenaline and sheer terror pounding in my chest. Kill! I vaulted over the ramparts in a flash. My phantom-like appearance scared the living daylights out of the rebels. Before they could even process what was happening, my razor-sharp chin sword was already swinging. Slash! Drops of warm blood splattered across my face. A ruthless fury ignited in my gut. I dove straight into the mob of enemies. And struck first. Off in the distance, General Meng Ao and the other commanders, peering through the bright moonlight, caught a blurry glimpse of a lone grunt breaching the wall. They instantly clapped and roared with laughter. Ha! Now that is a true warrior of Great Qin. Whose man is that? If he can hold the wall, the highest honors go to him. But no one could answer him. Even with the bright moonlight, they were way too far back. It's not like they had binoculars. Who could possibly make out a face from there? But just then, a massive, thunderous cheer erupted from the charging Qin soldiers. Squad leader Hei Bai is on the wall. Charge, brothers, charge. Good old Niu, who looked like a meathead but was sharp as a tack, saw me breach the wall. To hype me up, he screamed at the top of his lungs. The other 10 guys next to him immediately joined in, hollering their heads off. Given Meng Tian's high rank, there was no way he'd risk his own neck. He was stationed all the way at the back of the army and heard the news that I'd taken the wall. Suddenly, they burst into laughter. Out of 50,000 men, over 30,000 are fresh recruits. Hearing that I'd already scaled the wall, they immediately started screaming their lungs out, cheering me on. Even their fear melted away. They broke into a sprint, charging madly toward the city wall. Morale skyrocketed in that instant. Meanwhile, stationed all the way at the rear, Meng Ao and Meng Wu could hear it loud and clear. The earth-shattering roars of the soldiers echoing across the battlefield. Meng Wu pondered for a moment before speaking up. Could this man be that young boy Meng Tian mentioned earlier? Meng Ao's mind raced, recalling that his grandson had indeed brought him up briefly. He said he found a young foot soldier with godlike strength, no older than 12. A kid capable of tearing apart tigers and leopards with his bare hands. But alas, at the time, he was too busy figuring out how to quickly pacify Jinyang to pay any real attention to it. If it really is that boy, our grandson has struck absolute gold. Meng Ao stroked his beard and let out a hearty laugh. According to Qin law, if you want to climb the ranks later on, you need fierce warriors fighting under your command. Meng Wu smiled as well. His father was getting old now, so the younger generation had to push hard and climb the ranks to secure the Meng family's legacy. Meanwhile, up on the walls of Puyang I was completely drenched in blood. Looking like a vengeful demon crawling straight out of hell, my Qin sword slashed endlessly. Relying purely on my monstrous physique to hold my ground, I was like an iron nail, hammered fiercely into the city wall. But 2 fists can't fight off a horde. Catching me off guard, several rebel spearmen violently drove their weapons right into my back. But before they could even celebrate, I backhanded my blade, decapitating 3 of them in one swing. Blood erupted from their necks like a geyser, raining down on the battlefield in crimson drops. Damn, that actually hurts. I hissed, grimacing in agony. Thanks to my leather armor, and my constantly evolving physique, the 3 spears that pierced me were instantly clamped by my muscles, unable to push an inch deeper. They hardly did any real damage. This horrifying sight sent shivers down the rebels' spines. They looked ready to turn and run. Because I was the first to breach the wall, I'd drawn the attention of almost every rebel up there, throwing their once organized defense into absolute chaos. The Qin army seized the chance, raising several more siege ladders against the walls. Brothers, hurry up and back him up. Brother Hei Bai and Niu roared until their voices cracked. They were burning with anxiety. Everyone knew the glory of being the first to scale the wall was the ultimate military achievement, but it was also a total suicide mission. 10 young men scrambled up the wall as fast as humanly possible. When they saw me, looking like a man entirely made of blood, completely surrounded by enemy troops, their eyes went bloodshot. Forgetting all their fear, they charged straight into the mob. Niu, who was built like a tank, was the first to crash into the enemy ranks. Like a wild bull, he rammed right through the rebels blocking his path. The 9 men right behind him seized the opening, slashing down the stumbling enemies. "Shi Chang, we've got you." When they were just 2 or 3 meters away, Niu screamed out, making sure I wouldn't mistake them for rebels and chop them down too. Hearing that, I caught a glimpse behind Niu and the boys from the corner of my eye. Seeing more and more Qin soldiers pouring over the wall, a massive wave of relief washed over me. Being the first to breach is just too damn hard, even with my body being reinforced 4 times over the past 4 years. My strength alone surged by an extra 1,200 pounds. And even with that, I still got hacked up until I was covered in wounds. My leather armor was completely shredded to pieces. You can just imagine how brutal it was. Hei Bai is unstoppable. The Qin soldiers who scaled the wall couldn't help but look at me with absolute awe. Their blood pumping, they forcibly pushed down the terror in their hearts. I kicked the traitor right in front of me, sending him flying, and roared at the top of my lungs, "Brothers! Lock formation, follow me and slaughter these traitors." The Qin army's morale skyrocketed. They immediately locked shields and charged at the rebels. The battle on the wall instantly turned into an absolute bloodbath. Blades clashed back and forth, turning the whole place into a chaotic frenzy. I fought like a literal god of war, not feeling even a single ounce of exhaustion. Swinging my Qin sword, I slaughtered the rebels, one after another. "Hurry, surround him and take him down." Seeing this, the rebel commander panicked. He frantically called in his elite guards to gang up on me. But the number of Qin soldiers rallying behind me was multiplying. They locked into a tight shield wall, fighting right by my side, making the rebels' attempt to surround us completely useless. "You damn monster, don't you dare take another step," the rebel commander yelled. Seeing that absolutely no one could stop me, he roared in pure rage, and charged right at me, swinging his long blade. I just let out a cold laugh. A flash of pure disdain crossed my eyes. I blurred out of the way, dodging his strike, and slammed a brutal backhand punch straight into his gut. The commander's eyes practically bulged out of his skull. His body curled up like a cooked shrimp. Absolute terror filled his eyes as he turned to run for his life. But the agonizing pain in his stomach left him completely paralyzed. "Your commander has been captured. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately," I roared at the top of my lungs. My voice echoed across the battlefield like a crack of thunder. Hei Bai is mighty. The Qin army's morale exploded even higher, crashing into the traitors like a violent hurricane. They beat the rebels back step by step, leaving them flickering like a dying candle in the wind. A hint of second-hand embarrassment flashed in Niu's eyes. He leaned in and whispered, "Hey brother Hei Bai. He's just some low-ranking captain, why the hell would they surrender just for him?" My massive frame completely froze. My face flushed with sheer embarrassment. Thank God I was absolutely drenched in blood, so no one could actually see the look on my face. Niu, was I yelling too loud just now? Loud? They could hear you all the way down at the bottom of the wall. Oh, god damn it. My badass image is completely ruined. I slapped my forehead hard, completely crushing whatever tiny shred of hope I had left. I shot a deadly, ferocious glare straight down at the rebel captain groveling on the ground. I gritted my teeth and spat, "You useless piece of trash." With a single, icy flash of my Qin sword, his head went rolling across the dirt. I marched right up, grabbed the guy by the hair, and strapped his severed head to my belt. He just kept muttering and cursing, made me look like an absolute idiot in front of everyone. "Son of a bitch, acting all tough and serious. I actually thought you were some big shot general. All bark and absolutely no bite." Meanwhile, Meng Ao and Meng Wu were watching the entire battle from a distance. Seeing me fight with such sheer brutality, they couldn't help but nod in deep approval. Meng Ao let out a warm laugh. "This kid is truly extraordinary if we groom him well. He will absolutely become a pillar of our Great Qin." Meng Wu nodded firmly. "You are entirely right, father. Once this battle is over, we must reward Hei Bai handsomely. We need to build a strong bond between him and our Meng family." Meng Ao simply stayed silent, but he nodded, completely agreeing. He knew he was getting up there in years, and his only worry was the younger generation. He didn't want, after he passed away, for his family to fall into ruin. The scene cuts back to Jin Yang's city walls. By now, the rebels on the wall had been completely wiped out. Corpses littered the ground, leaving barely any room to step. Dozens of our Qin soldiers jammed the city breach, desperately blocking the surging rebels. This gave the men who had just fought tooth and nail a moment to catch their breath, and bought precious time for the rest of our army to scale the walls. I stood there on the ramparts, basking in the absolute respect shining from my brothers in arms. A massive wave of satisfaction washed over me. I knew that after this battle, I would no longer be just some nameless foot soldier, but a rising star in the Qin army. "Squad leader, you definitely bagged the first blood merit for scaling the wall." Niu cheered in a low, thrilled voice, a huge grin plastered across his face. I gave a slight smile, as a much wilder idea suddenly sparked in my mind. If I could manage to kill their general too, I'd become a total legend after just one fight. My path would skyrocket. The more I thought about it, the more doable it felt. Without hesitating, I went right for it. While the surrounding soldiers watched me in sheer confusion, I reached down and ripped the heavy armor right off the headless corpse of the rebel commander. Holding it up, I shouted, "Brothers, we secured the glory for scaling the wall. But those rebel scum aren't dead yet." My gaze turned cold and fierce as I swept my eyes over the men. Slowly, I raised my chin sword high into the air and roared, "Who dares to follow me into the city? Let's slaughter the enemy and carve a bloody path for our brothers. We will follow the squad leader to the death." Erniu and a few others bellowed out first. After the brutal bloodbath we just survived, they had completely grown used to the storm of blood and slaughter. Every single one of them had the blood of at least 2 or 3 enemies on their hands. "We will follow the squad leader to the death." The rest of the Qin soldiers, who were already in absolute awe of me, instantly roared back in unison. Besides, they weren't stupid. With me leading the charge at the front, it was the perfect chance to rack up some easy military merits. Especially for the Qin soldiers who just climbed up. Their eyes were practically bloodshot with greed. Good. I took massive, confident strides toward the inner city breach, shouting at the top of my lungs, "Brothers, let me clear the way." I had only taken a few steps when something hit me. I quickly swung my blade, slashing down the thick wooden military banner next to me. With a deafening smash, the 3 rebels right at the front were sent flying backward, coughing up blood. Their bodies crashed into the dense crowd of their own men, knocking down a whole chunk of them. Hell yeah, now this is a real man's weapon. I let out a wild, adrenaline-fueled laugh, deciding right then and there. Once this war is over, no matter what, I am getting myself a heavy polearm for the battlefield. Those rebel bastards down in the city had no idea how terrifying I was. Seeing me dare to charge in completely alone, they immediately raised their blades and charged fiercely up at me. Bring it on. A brutal, cold gleam flashed in my eyes. I swung the heavy flagpole as easily as if it were a massive iron club. Every single sweeping strike was met with the agonizing screams of the rebels and the sickening crunch of shattering bones. The rebels' fierce assault completely crumbled under my makeshift club. They couldn't even put up a decent fight. Relying purely on my own brutal strength, I steadily carved my way down into the city. The moment my boots stepped off the stairs and hit the inner city ground, it was like a savage tiger returning to the mountains. Without the narrow stairs or my own men cramping my style, I could swing that massive pole with everything I had. In my hands, that wooden shaft became the most terrifying weapon of slaughter on earth. Anyone it smashed into was instantly crushed to death or brutally maimed. San Niu and the rest of the Qin soldiers were right on my heels. They tore through the bloody path I'd carved out for them, pouring into the city and throwing themselves into a brutal, hand-to-hand slaughter with the rebels. An endless sea of rebels surged toward us, desperate to crush and slaughter this reckless little band of Qin soldiers. Down in the city streets, the fighting only grew more savage. I was fighting like an absolute demon, taking on the brunt of their attacks all by myself, but my men were still dropping at a terrifying rate. If it weren't for the steady stream of brothers scaling the walls and dropping down to back us up, we would have been wiped out completely. Erniu and the guys locked into a tight formation right behind me. Even covered in their own blood, they kept their cool, systematically cutting down the enemy. Watching the Qin soldiers around us dropping like flies, I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of relief. Thank God I was so hard on them during training. But damn it, there were just too many rebels. The handful of reinforcements trickling down from the siege ladders was nothing but a drop in the bucket. Fighting like this, even my body was starting to give out. I was gasping for air. Brothers, hold the line. I'm going for the gates. I'll let the main army in. Without another word, I spun around, signaling the blood-soaked Erniu and his squad to follow me. We charged straight through the enemy lines, just as I was sending rebels flying with massive swings of my flagpole. The wood finally gave out. It snapped in half with a loud crack. I didn't even blink. I just reached out and grabbed 2 spears lunging right at my chest. With a brutal yank, I ripped them straight out of the rebels' hands. I started swinging wildly. The spears weren't as heavy as the flagpole, but they still smashed the rebels to the dirt, leaving them completely paralyzed. They'd hit the ground screaming in pain, only to get finished off by Erniu and the boys right behind me. We were barely 20 meters from the gatehouse. Pushing myself to the absolute limit, we carved our way through in a matter of seconds. Both spears had snapped a long time ago. I didn't even care anymore. I just grabbed whatever weapons I could strip from the dead and kept swinging. I fought like a madman, keeping the entire rebel swarm at bay. San Niu, get that gate open. Without looking back, I gripped my bloody weapon, holding the line like a one-man army. Every single rebel that locked eyes with me was shaking in their boots. Today, I'm securing that rank 4 military title, and not even God himself can stop me. I spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva, choking on pieces of torn flesh. Yu and the boys didn't waste a second. They threw themselves at the heavy wooden bolts, prying them free. Slowly, the massive city gates began to groan open, but the very second a crack appeared, the Qin soldiers ramming it from the outside smashed right through. The guys outside nearly threw their backs out from the sudden drop in resistance, while Yu and the guys inside got thrown halfway across the street by the swinging doors. It was honestly a little awkward, but then they saw the mountain of corpses, and not far away, they saw me, standing like an absolute demon, holding back the entire rebel horde. The sight left the breaching soldiers completely stunned. What the hell are you staring at? Get your asses over here and help. Seeing the reinforcements pour in, Yu and the guys charged back into the fray to back me up, screaming at the top of their lungs. Kill them all. The Qin soldiers finally snapped out of their daze and launched a furious charge. As they rushed past, their eyes were filled with absolute awe. With the reinforcements flooding in, the crushing weight on my shoulders finally lifted. I finally had a second to catch my breath, and that's when the searing, burning agony hit every inch of my body. It made me grit my teeth in defiance. Yu rushed over immediately, throwing my arm over his shoulder to prop me up. He looked at me, panicked. Boss, are you alright? Fall back and rest. We've got this. But right at that moment, General Meng Tian pushed his way through the chaos out of nowhere. He took one look at my blood-soaked body, looking like a snowman covered in dust. His eyes were filled with a mix of admiration and embarrassment. To put it bluntly, I'm no match for you. As a commander of 500, with my troops charging ahead, fighting bloody battles, and claiming the honor of being the first to breach the city walls. As my direct superior, he could easily rake in plenty of military merits himself. But coming from a long line of generals, his heart was completely weighed down by an overwhelming sense of guilt. Thinking about his family's legacy, he didn't dare, he simply couldn't act like me. And just cast life and death aside. Commander, stop messing around. Got any water? Give me some. I was panting like a bull, feeling like my throat was practically on fire. Meng Tian quickly grabbed the water skin from his horse and tossed it to me. I caught the water skin and downed it aggressively, chugging the entire bag in one go. The sheer exhaustion from the grueling battle faded quite a bit. Commander, is my military merit this time enough for a promotion? I asked in a curious tone, staring at Meng Tian with burning eyes. Meng Tian flashed a bitter smile. Looking a bit down, he said, not just you. Even I'm going to ride your coattails and get promoted. But then he started laughing again, and added with a hint of envy, with this battle, you've completely made a name for yourself, kid. You'll definitely catch the eyes of the big shots at the royal court. I thought about it for a second, knowing exactly what was on Meng Tian's mind, and tried to comfort him. Commander, you come from a prestigious family. In the future, you're destined to be a great pillar of our Great Qin. How could you just charge blindly into the enemy lines like I do? A true general should oversee the bigger picture. You can't just rely on brute courage alone. Why envy someone else's strengths and forget your own? Those words really struck a chord with Meng Tian. Since we were both young, he naturally envied me, but at the end of the day, our statuses were entirely different. Everyone has their own path. Walking the one that suits you best is the real way to go. Seeing Meng Tian stay silent, I started getting a little anxious. Commander, you still haven't answered me. With today's military merits, what rank can I get promoted to? Meng Tian thought about it for a moment, and slowly uttered, your military rank will be at least a commander of 500. It's absolutely beyond measure. I was thrilled, a remarkably cheeky grin spreading across my face. I lowered my voice and said, I want to pull off something massive. I wonder if the commander dares to get in on it? Unsurprisingly, that piqued Meng Tian's curiosity. Act first, and ask for forgiveness later. My smile grew even wider, looking like a creepy uncle luring a clueless kid. As I tempted him, give me 100 men, and I'll hand you all 4 major military merits from this single battle. Meng Tian looked utterly dumbfounded, totally shocked by my sheer audacity. He looked at me, drenched in blood, hesitating before saying, you've already secured the highest merit. Maybe we should just call it a day? He didn't want me to end up like a shooting star blazing across the sky, burning out way too fast. Out of the 4 great military merits, we've already secured 2. Why risk everything just to grab the other 2? My smile faded, and I shook my head seriously. I raised my voice, Commander, will you give me your permission? Just as Meng Tian stood there at a loss, unsure of what to decide. A booming, authoritative voice rang out from behind us. I will give you 500 men, to help you secure the merit of slaying the enemy general and capturing their flag. Meng Tian whipped his head around. The voice belonged to none other than his father, Meng Wu, with the commander-in-chief, Meng Ao, following right behind him. Without missing a beat, I cupped my fists in respect and said, don't worry, General. I'll be back before you know it. Meng Ao and Meng Wu both nodded at the same time. For such a young lad to have this kind of sheer presence, your future will be nothing short of extraordinary. Go, if you can claim the top honors in this battle. I myself will petition the king for your reward. Meng Ao roared with laughter, making no secret of his profound admiration. A flash of iron resolve crossed my eyes. I bowed deeply to Meng Ao and Meng Wu, then spun on my heel and strode right into the city. All around me, the Qin soldiers looked on with sheer awe, their faces burning with fiery passion. They fixed their eyes on my blood-soaked figure, every single one praying I would choose them. Follow me into the fray, to slay the enemy commander and seize their flag. I need 500 men. To ride with me, we're going to hunt down their general, and rip down their banner. I roared at the top of my lungs, my voice booming with raw power and absolute conviction. The moment the words left my mouth, Qin soldiers frantically surged forward to rally by my side. They knew perfectly well this charge was practically a suicide mission. But to fight shoulder to shoulder with a warrior like this? That was a soldier's greatest glory. Catch! Meng Ao flicked his wrist, tossing his own personal sword straight to me. Feigning a stern scowl, if you lose your commander's sword, I'll have your head under military law. I caught the blade firmly in my grip, letting out a ferocious roar like a savage tiger. Rest easy, commander, I will bring this blade right back to you. Along with the rebel general's severed head, Meng Ao smiled warmly and gave a nod of approval. He didn't say another word. Unsheathe your swords, let none stand in our way. I ripped the glorious blade from its scabbard, screaming a brutal war cry. The aura of the 500 men was absolutely terrifying. In perfect, deafening unison, they drew their Qin swords. Move out! At my roaring command, the 500 Qin elites charged toward the heart of the city, unstoppable as a pack of starved tigers descending a mountain. Their footsteps thundered heavy and resolute, every single stride echoing an ironclad vow of victory. Even staring down an enemy force that outnumbered them many times over, they didn't flinch. Not even a little. The battle inside the city was still raging wildly, but my squad and I tore through it like a razor-sharp blade, plunging straight into the enemy's heart. Any rebel foolish enough to stand in our way was slaughtered on the spot. Wherever my sword pointed, we were utterly invincible, brutally carving out a literal path of blood straight to the city center. Meanwhile, on the other side fall back. If we stay here any longer, we're all dead men. The rebel general, Wang Ming, looked utterly defeated, his face pale as ash. A sickening wave of regret washed over him. If it hadn't been for the sweet-talking manipulation of the Puyang Sun family and their cronies, he would never have ended up in this wretched mess. The reinforcements they promised reinforcements. Why aren't they here? The clan heads from Jinyang were just as frantic, consumed by utter despair. Back then, they had received secret orders from the king of Zhao's envoy, urging them to rebel against Qin. The plan was simple. Wait for the Qin forces to arrive, then launch a massive pincer attack with the Zhao reinforcements, and wipe the Qin army off the face of the earth. If they hadn't believed that, they never would have had the guts to rebel in the first place. Wang Ming let out a hollow, despairing laugh, jerking to his feet and stumbling toward the door. He threw a cold, dead-eyed glance over his shoulder. It's over. You're all on your own now. May the heavens have mercy on you. These fools had dragged him into hell. Why should he give a damn whether they lived or died? Hearing Wang Ming's icy betrayal, the clan heads spiraled into pure panic. They scrambled over each other, begging and pleading for him to take them with him. But with death breathing down their necks, every single second was a matter of life and death. Wang Ming wasn't about to waste another breath. He barged right out, desperate to use the chaos to slip out through the south gate. Escorted by over 1,000 elite guards, Wang Ming bolted from the manor. Wanted to head straight for the south gate to break through, but just as he stepped out the door, a mocking voice reached his ears. Wang Ming instinctively glanced toward the shadows on the side. So, you're the rebel leader, huh? I slowly walked out from the shadows, leading 500 men. My gaze swept over the massive banner at the mansion's entrance, a fiery glint flashing in my eyes. Wang Ming's personal guards immediately formed up, shielding him in the center. They stared at us Qin soldiers with intense caution. Don't waste time, wipe them out. Wang Ming's face turned grim, terrified of being bogged down by our small group of a few hundred Qin troops. I flashed a smile bright and radiant. Honestly, if it weren't for the blood completely soaking my body, you'd think I was just some innocent, cheerful kid. Brothers, not only do they refuse to surrender, they actually want to counterattack us. Before I could even finish, I roared at the top of my lungs. Tell me, what should we do? Kill. The 500 Qin soldiers behind me roared in unison. Even though the enemy outnumbered us several times over, we made it feel like we had the absolute advantage. Good, very good. Wang Ming laughed out of pure fury at the blood-soaked sight of me and the Qin soldiers backing me up. I've never seen someone so eager to die. He didn't even bother wasting more words. He backhanded his sword from his waist, roaring out, "Follow me, annihilate these arrogant Qin fools. Charge." Seeing Wang Ming launch his attack, I gripped my Qin sword and charged right at them. Meng Ao's blade was incredibly sharp, slicing through the rebel guard's leather armor with absolute ease. I moved like lightning. The moment I slaughtered the 3 men in front of me, I twisted sideways, dodging a blade thrusting from my flank. With a swift backhand, I ran him straight through the heart. Who can stop me? My furious roar exploded like thunder, terrifying the surrounding rebels so badly they instinctively stumbled back a few steps. Is that all you got? A flash of absolute disdain crossed my face. I pivoted on my heel and instantly plunged into the mob of soldiers. The cold steel of my chin sword flashed, throwing arcs of crimson blood through the air. Fueled by monstrous strength and a razor-sharp blade, anyone who took a hit from me was literally torn wide open. They collapsed to the ground with horrifying wounds, bleeding out rapidly and slowly fading away. Seeing me butcher his men like chopping vegetables, Wang Meng completely lost his composure. Gripping his long sword, he charged straight at me. If he let me keep slaughtering them like this, his own personal guards wouldn't last much longer. He waited for a split second when I was catching my breath. His sword struck out like a viper, aiming right for my heart. The angle was incredibly vicious. Our blades violently clashed, igniting a blinding spray of sparks. A flash of genuine shock crossed Wang Meng's eyes. He never expected a blood-soaked kid to have such incredible skill. Even though I countered in a rush, my raw power was absolutely terrifying. The sheer force tore the webbing of Wang Meng's hand wide open. His entire arm went completely numb. For a moment, he couldn't even flex his muscles. Die. I didn't hesitate for a single second. I slid my long sword straight up along his blade. Metal ground against metal, sending sparks flying everywhere. With a swift backhand slash, his head hit the dirt. Right up to his dying breath, Wang Meng couldn't comprehend how a kid like me possessed such monstrous strength. Even a well-fed, top-tier veteran like him couldn't compare. The enemy commander is dead. I bent down, grabbed his wide-eyed, severed head by the hair, and hoisted it high into the air. My smile was as utterly arrogant as humanly possible. Our commander is mighty. The Qin soldiers who followed me went absolutely wild. The glory of slaying an enemy general meant they'd all get a share of the spoils. With their blood boiling, they threw themselves like savage wolves, tearing straight into the terrified, crumbling rebel army. The general is dead. What do we do now? Should we surrender? The rebel guards were completely at a loss, their resistance noticeably crumbling. They were quickly being cut down by our Qin warriors. Brothers, leave no one alive, I yelled, slowly walking forward with my blood-drenched sword in hand. I let out a harsh laugh. I'm not one to hog all the glory. Cut them down, boys, and let's head back to claim our riches and glory. My words plunged the remaining rebel guards into absolute despair. Many turned and ran, their faces deathly pale. They were completely terrified, their spirits utterly broken. Chase them down, don't let a single one escape. With a casual sweep of my sword, I sliced through two rebels right in front of me as the rest scrambled for their lives. I immediately ordered the pursuit. They were sitting ducks. How could we just let them slip away? The Qin warriors charged like tigers coming down a mountain, roaring and rushing at the rebels with their swords drawn. Even many of our wounded refused to miss out on the battlefield glory. Limping and using their swords as crutches, they hobbled eagerly after the fleeing enemy. I grinned wildly, gripping my blood-stained sword, and strolled right into the lavish mansion ahead. Right on cue, several clan heads came hurrying toward me. The second they laid eyes on me, utter despair washed over them. They froze in their tracks, looking as if they'd been struck by lightning. And when they noticed what was hanging from my waist, the severed head of their general, eyes still wide open in death, they nearly wet themselves in terror. What? What do you want? The head of the Sun clan bellowed, trying to sound fierce despite his shaking voice. Give the old man credit for keeping his composure, because the guy standing right behind him literally did wet his pants. I am Hei Bai, a squad leader of the Great Qin. A terrifying, twisted smile crept across my face. I reached up and wiped the fresh blood smeared across my face, though it only made me look even more like a demon. Look at you all, scrambling around like frightened rats. I take it you were in cahoots with that traitor Wang Meng? If you don't want to end up like him, stay exactly where you are. The clan leaders shook with absolute dread, their eyes glued to my sword as blood dripped steadily onto the floor. Gulping hard, the head of the Sun clan desperately forced down his terror. Putting on a pathetic, groveling smile, he stammered, "Why, young general, it's a misunderstanding. We were all forced here by Wang Meng against our will. If you just let us go home, we'd gladly offer you 100 pieces of gold as a token of our gratitude." With his shrewd, experienced eyes, the old fox figured I couldn't be older than 14 or 15. To be drafted at such a young age, fighting on the front lines covered in blood. I had to be some ignorant peasant boy from a dirt-poor family. 200 pieces of gold? He was absolutely certain a street rat like me couldn't resist that kind of wealth. And the more he thought about it, the more confident he grew. A smug, overly confident smirk spread across his face, a complete 180 from the terrified, trembling mess he was just seconds ago. 200 pieces of gold. My eyes instantly lit up, though I quickly forced a conflicted, hesitant look. The laws of Qin are strict, I muttered. Treason is a capital offense that wipes out your entire bloodline, you know. But I didn't shut the door completely. I deliberately left a tiny bit of wiggle room. And oh boy, did those old fools take the bait. They exchanged quick glances, their faces lighting up with relief. They were shrewd old foxes. They knew exactly what I was implying. I just wanted more money, and lucky for them, money was the one thing they had plenty of, as long as I turned a blind eye and let them walk away. The price tag meant absolutely nothing. The 6 clan heads huddled tightly together, muttering and whispering among themselves for a moment. Finally, the head of the Sun clan put on a grim, serious face. "We are just humble merchants. We really don't want any further trouble," he said, trying to sound dignified. "Your concerns are completely justified, young general." Then, he slowly raised a single finger. He leaned in and whispered, "To ensure our families stay out of this mess, the 6 of us are willing to pull together 1,000 pieces of gold for you. What do you say?" I almost burst out laughing right then and there, but I forced a stiff, reluctant frown, acting as if I was being shortchanged. With a loud, exaggerated sigh of annoyance, I grumbled, "Fine. 1,000 it is, then. You're just lucky you ran into a reasonable guy like yours truly. If it were anyone else, I guarantee your heads would have rolled by now." The 6 leaders forced a smile, and hurried over to my side, desperately holding their breath against the pungent stench of blood radiating off me. They buttered me up with flattering smiles, though those smiles hid something a bit harder to read. But then I had a change of heart. If they could just cough up 1,000 gold pieces without blinking, it meant they had seriously deep pockets. And since I was about to get a promotion, with a massive influx of new troops under my command, I couldn't just let my boys run around in rags. Going into battle swinging rusty, tetanus-inducing blades? No way. Getting proper gear and long weapons for my brothers was going to be entirely up to them. While I was idly chatting with them, a chaotic flurry of footsteps suddenly echoed from outside the estate, accompanied by loud, excited chatter. I stepped outside, and saw my 500 men hobbling over, leaning on each other and laughing. They were absolutely drenched in blood and battered with wounds, but their faces were lit up with pure adrenaline, still cracking jokes with each other. I instantly let out a massive sigh of relief. I brought these men into this hell, and I wanted to make sure I brought them all back out. Good, they all made it back. I looked over the crowd with a proud grin, then called out, "Hurry up and get our wounded brothers inside the estate." The men didn't waste a single second, immediately rushing the injured inside. That left just over 200 of us standing there, staring back at me with burning, fiery devotion. Niu, I'm right here, Captain." Niu immediately pushed his way through the crowd and marched straight up to my side. "What are your orders, Captain?" he asked. Without changing my expression, I shot a quick glance at the 6 leaders standing nearby. I leaned in and whispered something into Niu's ear. A flash of surprise, followed by pure excitement, lit up his eyes. He gave me a firm, heavy nod. "All right, gentlemen, lead the way." The 6 leaders immediately shuffled to the front to guide us. In this era, without bank checks or wire transfers, where people relied strictly on gold, silver, and copper as currency, handling massive sums of money was a total nightmare. It crossed my mind that, sooner or later, I really needed to pitch the idea of unified paper currency to the first emperor. Lugging all that heavy coin around was just holding business back. After all, no one in their right mind would dare step out of the house carrying tens of thousands in gold and silver, just waiting to get targeted and robbed blind. Once they were out of sight, I walked straight over to the massive banner planted at the estate's entrance. With a swift, cold flash of my chin sword, I sliced right through the flagpole, thick as a man's arm. The cut was clean and perfectly smooth. It was a damn good sword. But sadly, way too light. I shook my head and let out a sigh. I snatched the falling banner out of the air, slung it casually over my shoulder, and headed straight into the city. By now, the battle inside the city had turned into a complete slaughter. The Qin forces were like vicious tigers storming down a mountain, hunting down the shattered remnants of the rebel army and leaving the city streets completely littered with corpses. The banner, the general has come to back us up. The desperate, hopeless rebels suddenly found a second wind, staring eagerly, locking their eyes on the top of the banner as it slowly came into view. It was like they'd finally found their savior. But the very next second when a blood-drenched me dragged that banner into full view, the spark died. Every single one of those traitors plunged into absolute, crushing despair. "Well, gentlemen, I'm afraid your commander won't be making it today," I teased, my voice dripping with dark amusement. I shot them a mocking, predatory glare as I watched the life completely drain from the rebels' eyes. "Ha ha ha, good lad, I knew you had it in you." A figure stepped out from the Qin formations, equally drenched head to toe in blood. It was none other than the commander of 500, Meng Tian, who had just spearheaded the assault on the city walls. He couldn't go. That pent-up frustration in his chest had completely vanished now, leaving him feeling incredibly relieved. I let out a low chuckle, and right in front of both armies, I ripped the rebel banner to shreds. I casually tossed it to the ground and grinned. "Commander, do we keep killing?" Meng Tian's heart swelled with towering pride. He gave a heavy nod and roared back, "The rebels must be slaughtered." The moment he spoke, I launched myself like a cannonball straight into the enemy ranks. My Qin sword flashed with a cold gleam, and in an instant, several heads rolled across the dirt. "Hold on, you little brat." Why are you so damn bloodthirsty? Right at that moment, a booming voice echoed from behind the Qin forces. The soldiers immediately parted to clear a path. Meng Ao, leading a group of generals, rode forward slowly on horseback. Meng Ao's gaze fell on the severed head I had strapped to my waist, and his grin grew even wider. Claiming 4 major military merits in a single battle, you, kid, are pretty much the #1 man in our Great Qin now. I wasn't about to let it get to my head. I immediately cupped my hands and bowed. You flatter me, Commander. Hei Bai, I'm far from perfect. I just got by on a bit of luck and brute strength. I try not to let victory go to my head, nor defeat break my spirit. Hearing this, the surrounding generals' respect for me instantly shot up a few notches. After all, when a young man achieves sudden success, he's usually full of himself. Letting it go to his head is just human nature. For a teenager to remain this grounded, Hei Bai's future is destined for greatness. This kid is way too humble. If it were me, I'd be walking on air by now. In that moment, the generals all broke into warm, friendly smiles. They clearly wanted to get on my good side. If you generals keep praising me, I'm going to let it all go to my head. I scratched the back of my neck with a grin. Honestly, I really didn't think it was a big deal. I'm only 14 years old right now, and I'm already this ridiculously strong. What's it going to be like in the future? Give it another 10 or 20 years, after 10 or 20 more power upgrades. What kind of monstrous level will my body reach? I can't even begin to imagine. By then, I'll probably be a walking, talking one-man army. So, I really wasn't just being modest. Alright, the rebels haven't been completely crushed yet. Save the chit-chat for when we get back, Meng Ao barked, cutting everyone off. We're standing right in front of the damn rebels, and you guys start gossiping? My smile vanished in an instant, and my murderous glare locked right back onto the rebels. I snarled coldly, traitors cannot be spared. Every last one of them must die. As I spoke, I raised my Qin sword, ready to dive right back into the slaughter. The surviving rebels trembled in absolute terror. We surrender, even though they knew they were doomed either way. At least they could cling to life just a little bit longer. If they actually had to fight this murderous demon standing in front of them, they were completely screwed. I had no choice but to stop in my tracks. I turned to look at Meng Ao, waiting for his final call. Kill them. Meng Ao spat the words out like ice. These men were originally surrendered troops from the Zhao state anyway. Since they had chosen mutiny, there would be absolutely no mercy. The generals behind him stared with eyes as cold as stone. Not a single man spoke up to stop the order. If this were a regular Qin unit mutinying, the low-ranking grunts might just face exile. But for surrendered Zhao troops who re-rebelled, their only fate was death. The second the order left his lips, I was already making my move, lunging headfirst straight into the bloody fray. Kicking up a storm of blood and gore. The speed was terrifying like a scythe through wheat. My sheer ferocity and ruthlessness left all those generals in absolute shock. No wonder this kid claimed the top 4 military honors in a single battle. That wasn't just luck. Do it. The Qin army surged through the city like a flood, scattering in all directions to hunt down the rebels. No matter how much they cried and begged, there wasn't a single ounce of hesitation. The wars between the feudal states had raged on for over 200 years. Even if they shared the same roots, they had long become mortal enemies. There would be absolutely no mercy shown today. The slaughter dragged on for 4 whole hours. The Qin army turned Xinjiang city completely upside down. Only after ensuring not a single rebel had escaped, did the troops finally stand down. They immediately began auditing the soldiers' battle merits, making damn sure no one dared to falsely claim another man's kills. I drove my Qin sword into the dirt, then leaned back against the wall, slowly sliding down to the ground. The moment my strained nerves finally relaxed, a searing agony from the wounds all over my body made me grit my teeth. But when I saw the surrounding Qin soldiers looking at me with total respect, I took a deep breath and forced myself to endure the pain, putting on a calm, unfathomable expression. Meanwhile, what was happening on the other side? The massive, 1,000 catty Niu locked his freezing gaze onto the Sun family patriarch, biting out every single word. It was clearly stated from the start. You surrender your entire family fortune in exchange for your lives. The Sun family patriarch nearly blacked out from the sheer rage. In his heart, he was cursing me as a worthless bastard. Not only was I breaking my promise, but I was actually going to confiscate their entire estate. Good sir, there must surely be some misunderstanding here. The patriarch forced down his boiling fury, bowing obsequiously. Why don't you take us to see the young general? Just to confirm things with him, no need. The commander made it perfectly clear. Niu didn't even bat an eyelid. He just waved his hand, signaling the Qin soldiers behind him to storm the mansion and start looting. Get out of the way, you old fossil. The patriarch happened to be blocking the doorway, and a Qin soldier stepped right up and kicked him. The patriarch was old and frail. How could he possibly take a hit like that? He instantly crashed to the ground, groaning in absolute agony. 2 middle-aged men immediately rushed out from the sidelines, flanking the patriarch on both sides as they frantically tried to help him up. You're in the damn way. Kill them. The words had barely left his mouth when 2 Qin soldiers raised their swords and slashed down. With a sickening squelch, 2 heads rolled onto the dirt. Hot, fresh blood splattered everywhere, wrenching the patriarch's face. No. The piercing, hysterical wailing made Niu frown deeply. He roared, "Whoever cries, dies next." The chaotic wailing vanished instantly, leaving only the patriarch whimpering under his breath. He used every last ounce of his strength to crawl toward the severed heads of his 2 sons rolling just a few feet away. The Qin troops swarmed the estate, in less than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. They re-emerged with sacks big and small, gathering at the gates. "Move out, next house, lead the way." Niu didn't say another word. He just gave a sharp look, turned on his heel, and walked off. 2 Qin soldiers violently yanked the old patriarch up from the dirt by his collar. They dragged him, along with a few other clan leaders, toward the next estate. As for the rest of the Sun family, they were doomed. Over a dozen Qin soldiers grinned as they closed in on them. Moments later, blood-curdling screams echoed from behind Niu and his men. The patriarch whipped his head around, and in the next second, his eyes nearly bulged out of his skull. His entire family was being butchered by the Qin army. He was too old to handle a blow like this. The sheer, devastating shock went straight to his heart, and he passed out cold on the spot, with the Sun family serving as a bloody warning. The rest of the sweep went incredibly smoothly. Not a single household dared to utter a word of complaint. They meekly opened their doors, letting the Qin soldiers search their homes without a fuss. The sun was fully up now. It was well past 8 in the morning. Niu and the boys returned fully loaded. Lugging bags of all sizes and dragging the 6 clan leaders, they made their way to the center of the city. They drew curious stares from the surrounding Qin soldiers. Could they have been looting during the chaos? They're asking for a death wish. Gasps of disbelief rang out from the crowd. The laws of Qin were unforgiving. Fighting was one thing. The troops running amok was strictly forbidden. Plundering wealth on a whim was a crime punishable by beheading. Those men were the new recruits from Hei Bai's squad. A few of the onlookers spotted Niu leading the pack, and instinctively blurted out, "Hei Bai is screwed. With his subordinates pulling a stunt like this, the squad leader is going down with them." Some wore looks of blatant schadenfreude. No matter the era, there are always those who despise you for being poor, resent you for being rich, and just can't stand seeing anyone do better than themselves. Niu and the boys couldn't care less about them. Right now, their eyes were busy scanning the crowd, desperately searching for their squad leader. Where did Hei Bai go? The sharp-eyed Chun Ning happened to spot me slumped against the base of a wall. He immediately let out a joyful shout. It wasn't until they rushed over, while I was practically dying from the pain, that I noticed the stiff, forced smiles tugging at the corners of their mouths. "So, what's the haul? We're freaking rich." Niu casually popped open a wooden chest. Inside lay neat rows of solid silver ingots. There had to be at least 20 or 30 of them. Good, very good. In an instant, I felt the throbbing pain in my body wash away. My eyes practically turned into shining coins. In the 4 years since I arrived in the Great Qin Empire, this was the very first time I'd laid eyes on such a massive fortune. "Come on, we're going to see the commander." I shot a subtle, knowing glance at Chun Ning. The kid was always the sharpest of the bunch. He should know exactly what I meant. My body felt as heavy as lead. I couldn't get up to save my life. Catching my drift, Chun Ning hurried over and hoisted me to my feet. He leaned in and whispered, "Boss, shouldn't we go find a field medic right away?" I wasn't about to act tough. Even with my sturdy build, who the hell knew if I could survive something like tetanus out here? In this world, my physical body was the only thing I could truly rely on. "Keep up," Niu barked. The men immediately hoisted up their bags of loot and followed close behind. Together, we made our way straight to the county office in the heart of the city. Commander Meng Ao had set up his temporary headquarters there, busy handling the post-battle affairs with his generals. "Commander, squad leader Hei Bai requests an audience." The guard's announcement made Meng Ao pause for a moment. He shot a glance at Meng Wu beside him, and seeing that he wasn't angered by the interruption, he finally spoke in a steady voice, "Let him in." Deep down, he was rather curious. What could possibly be so urgent that a mere squad leader would bypass General Meng Wu just to see him? Logically speaking, unless it was a matter of absolute life and death, one does not simply skip the chain of command. Moments later, the guard and Chun Ning carried me inside. It was only then that I finally dropped my tough guy act, groaning and moaning with every step. My naturally pale face took on an even more sickly, ghastly hue. "Where is the medic? Where the hell is the medic?" Meng Ao's expression changed drastically, roaring in fury. "Why hasn't Hei Bai been treated yet?" My eyes lit up for a split second, before I quickly forced myself to look even more limp and pathetic. In the weakest, most fragile voice I could muster, I wheezed, It's fine, Commander. Some of my brothers are hurt way worse than me. Please save them first." Hei Bai Jianyue, there is indeed a matter of extreme urgency. As I reached this point in my report, I discreetly gave Chun Ning's hand a little squeeze. The latter took the cue immediately. With a slight sob in his voice, he cried out, "Commander, please, say no more. Every military officer present couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect. To have such a fierce warrior is truly a blessing for the Great Qin Empire. Chun Ning seamlessly took over the conversation, detailing how these clan leaders had gathered together with the rebel commander, Wang Meng. Hearing this, Meng Ao and the other generals shifted their gazes in unison onto the 6 clan leaders. Their dagger-like stares terrified the men so much that their legs shook uncontrollably. Speak. What shady dealings do you have with that Wang Meng? Meng Ao's voice boomed like a roaring tiger. It was deafening. The 6 clan leaders violently flinched. The very last shred of hope in their hearts completely shattered. They had always followed the lead of the Sun Clan Patriarch. Feeling everyone's eyes suddenly on him, the Sun Patriarch felt a cold chill run down his spine. With a sharp ring, a sword was drawn from its scabbard, pointing menacingly at him like a pouncing tiger. Pointing the blade directly at the Sun Patriarch, a general barked, "Spit it out. Or do you want her head to roll?" The Sun Patriarch let out a heavy sigh, not daring to hide the truth any longer. That day an envoy from the King of Zhao came to Jinyang, demanding that we raise our troops and rebel. The King of Zhao promised to send an army to support us. If the Qin army came to suppress the rebellion, we were supposed to attack together from the inside and the outside. Meng Ao furrowed his brows deeply, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Judging by what this man just said, the Zhao army must have been a step too late. They never expected the Qin forces to arrive so quickly, which means the Zhao army will be here any minute. My eyes suddenly lit up. With a burning, fiery gaze, I looked right at Meng Ao. A moment later, the commander made his decision. He roared out, "Guards! Pass down my orders. Summon the garrison outside the city to pull back inside immediately. Tell them to clear the battlefield, fast. We must brace for a surprise attack from the Zhao army." After his personal guards hurried off, Meng Ao turned back and asked, "Do you know the exact number of Zhao reinforcements?" The Sun Patriarch frantically shook his head. No, he stammered in panic. They only said they would send a massive army to help. They never told us the exact numbers. Maybe Wang Meng knows. Instantly, everyone's eyes darted straight to me. I felt a bit awkward. I casually swung my hand and smacked the severed head tied to my waist. "You useless piece of trash," I muttered at it. "Come on, spit it out if you know something." Yep, my whole vibe was just being completely unreasonable. The crowd stared at me in stunned silence. They literally had no idea what to say to me. "Forget it," Meng Ao sighed heavily. "We can't blame Hei Bai for this. He was completely out of the loop. Besides, why the hell would Wang Meng volunteer that information to him anyway? All of you, dismissed. Head back into the city immediately and put the troops on high alert. I need to report this to His Majesty right away." Meng Ao pinched the bridge of his nose, officially ordering everyone out. "Yes, Commander." The generals cupped their hands in a respectful salute. But just as they were about to turn and leave, I stepped in and stopped them. They had no idea what was going on, looking at me with pure confusion. Honestly, they only put up with this because it was me. If it had been anyone else, they would have chewed them out immediately. "Kid, what else do you want?" Even Meng Ao looked a bit curious. I cleared my throat, and with everyone's confused eyes fixed right on me, I spoke up in a deadpan voice. "General, Jinyang is the former capital of the Zhao state. Every single citizen inside these walls is a person of Zhao. The state of Zhao and our Qin are bitter blood enemies. We've fought hundreds of battles, big and small. You can just imagine how deep that hatred runs." My words cast a heavy silence over the room, leaving everyone deep in thought. They likely knew exactly what I was getting at, and a grim tension began to settle in their chests. They had completely overlooked this threat. "Are you afraid the Zhao citizens inside the city will riot?" Meng Ao felt a sudden wave of relief. His mind had been racing just moments before, and even he hadn't considered this danger. I gave a slow nod. I spoke, weighing every word. "We don't even need to look far back. Just look at Lord Wuan, who buried 400,000 Zhao soldiers alive. It's only been a few years since then. Zhao is arrogant enough to think they can wipe out the elite troops we sent to pacify them. The army they're sending must be massive, and that is going to fuel the fires of rebellion for the Zhao people right here in the city." The generals around us nodded, murmuring in agreement. These hardened veterans were no fools. They could clearly see the writing on the wall. When they can't see even a sliver of hope, the Zhao people will just keep their heads down and try to survive. But the second they see a spark of hope, especially a big one, they will absolutely revolt. Meng Ao stroked his beard slowly. His estimation of me clearly shot up. Seeing my potential, he didn't mind giving me a chance to prove myself. "All right, kid, Hei Bai, tell me how should we handle this?" I raised a single finger and spoke with absolute, ruthless conviction. "Even if we share the same bloodline, we stand on different sides. We must strike like lightning. Every single threat must be crushed in its cradle." Meng Ao frowned deeply. He knew my plan was brutal, yet undeniably effective. But he didn't want a bloodbath on his hands. Back when he was Lord Wuan's deputy general, he constantly warned him not to be so bloodthirsty. But the man refused to listen. And look at the miserable end he met. Who's to say all that slaughter didn't play a part in his downfall? He held back a sigh, An idiot could see what he was agonizing over. But as they say, if you aren't ruthless, you won't survive. I raised my hand and dragged a finger across my throat. Meeting Meng Ao's gaze without a flinch, I pressed on. Commander, you don't want our brothers getting stabbed in the back while fighting on the front lines, do you? Meng Ao stared at me, eyes filled with meaning. A few heavy seconds passed, and then he burst into booming laughter. I've been fighting wars north and south for decades. And yet, I'm not half as sharp or ruthless as you, kid. So be it then. His eyes instantly turned deadly cold. Radiating pure killer intent, he barked, Zhang Chun. Xin Yang, take your men and move out, right now. We are out of time. Hold nothing back. Purge them all. I will personally answer to the king later. The two generals shot up, cupping their fists in immediate obedience. I opened my mouth to speak, but stopped myself. I wanted in on the action. But just as I was about to volunteer, Meng Ao saw right through me. His booming voice echoed. Hei Bai, he declared heavily. In a single battle, you've claimed 4 major military merits. You've slaughtered countless enemies. I hereby appoint you as a commander of 500. Take your men out of the city and scout the Zhao army's movements. And don't look so disappointed. This is the absolute highest field rank I can give you right now. Once this campaign is over, I'll personally petition the king for your rewards. Your noble title and official rank can only be decided by His Majesty himself. As he said that, it was like a funny thought just crossed his mind. Faint smirk tugged at the corner of his lips, and he chuckled to himself. Well now, that old fox is going to have a hell of a headache trying to reward this kid. Right now, King Yingjung was still just a boy. The Prime Minister, Liu Buwei, held all the real power in the court. My rewards were definitely going to fall onto his desk. Presenting this to the king is just going through the motions. How exactly should he be rewarded? Just thinking about it gives me the chills. Liu Buwei is probably going to stress himself to death over this. Having no idea what Meng Ao was thinking, I flashed a goofy grin and said, Commander, you can rest easy. I'll handle this beautifully, I promise. Meng Ao smiled and waved his hand, signaling for me to leave. Seeing this, everyone immediately turned around to make their exit. I'd barely taken a few steps before I suddenly remembered something. I turned back with a cheeky grin. Commander, I get a cut of the loot we seized from those 6 families, right? Don't go taking it all for yourself now. Patriarch Sun backed me up on this, right? The head of the Sun family nodded vigorously, without a single second of hesitation. I was beyond satisfied with that. Get the hell out of here. Meng Ao barked, keeping a straight face. But seeing my shameless, cheeky grin, a complete 180 from my fierce presence on the battlefield, he had to fight back a laugh, his old face flushing slightly red. Meng Wu just shook his head helplessly and said, Don't delay military business. Why would the commander even care about your loose change? Besides, all that silver is going straight into the state treasury anyway. Since you earned that cash fair and square, no one is going to touch it. I have to admit, as the 2nd generation heir of the Meng family, one of the top noble houses in Great Qin, he carried himself with a class that ordinary folks just didn't have. I chuckled lightly, shooting Meng Wu a grateful look, before cupping my hands and bowing respectfully to both father and son. With Chunming supporting my weight, I finally took my leave. Once we were out of the county office, I took a deep breath, feeling the heavy, deadly tension that lingered in the air. Then, I gently pushed away Chunming's supporting hand.